before we start getting into all of the 7 steps to financial freedom, I want to kind of talk about what is financial freedom to you, because it gets thrown around all the time.
Absolutely, mate. So probably the best question you're going to ask all day, because a lot of people seem to think that it's the fast cars, the fancy jet, all those sorts of things. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
It's enough passive income to pay your current debts in your current lifestyle.
Okay.
So whatever it's costing you to live today, and most people don't do budgets, but if you do a budget, what's it costing you to put food on the table, fuel in the car, send the kids to school, do the things that are currently in your current life today? What's that costing you?
So financial freedom could be 70 grand. It could be 500 grand.
Absolutely. Now, the average Australian income is somewhere around the 80K mark. Most people are living within their means. So by the time you do a couple with a couple of kids, somewhere between 80 and 120K is pretty typical what it actually costs to actually have a family for their habits, right? So if you can earn enough passive income to pay those debts, it means that you buy your time for free. You don't have to go to work to earn that cash anymore.
I feel like you're more than qualified to talk about this, not only through the education you do through PDN, but you unlocked yourself from the very first deal and achieved financial freedom, correct?
Very first deal in property development, but I actually made myself financially free in investing first, then got divorced and lost it all, then had to do it again.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So I bought my first house at the age of 18.
Yeah.
My first investment property at the age of 21, and owned my first house outright at 24. So by the age of...
You smashed the mortgage? How'd you do that?
Look...
Story for another time?
A story for another time, but right. Let's just say a lot of good luck went my way in the early days. I read a good book, Jan Summers. I'm trying to remember the name of the book, but it was basically teaching you negative gearing.
Okay.
And so that was the only thing I knew. That's what I did. And I managed to perfectly time the market and nearly double my money on my first deal. And that enabled me to, I guess, pay down my PPR, which is the first time I learned what capital gains tax was. Very quickly learned, when you don't know enough, that there's heaps more to learn.
Okay. But it still went in your way, like pretty big though.
Yeah, it did. But it was not my skill set, let me tell you. I just happened to be the right place at the right time, doing the right thing, and it all worked magically for me.
Right. So you rode the wave.
I rode the wave and learnt very quickly that I didn't know everything, and then it became harder and harder in that first phase to do it with negative gearing, because the more debt you have, the less income you have, the less ability you have to buy the next one. So I kept hitting these glass ceilings in regards to buying the next investment property. So I got out, but it took me 20 years to get out. So at the age of 38, I was able to retire, except for getting divorced at 37.
Okay. So you're getting all of your hard work then end up being split, I'm assuming?
All the chips in the middle, sell everything up, start again.
Okay.
And that's when I went the development cycle.
And then the first development you did, if I've got your story right here, which I'd like to think I do, your first development, then you ended up making enough money to go, I'm done again.
Yeah. So first deal, I made $1 million profit and generated about a 210K positive income out of that one project.
That's huge, Rob.
Why, thank you.
Mate, okay. So if we haven't set the stage with credibility enough yet, I don't know what else we're going to be able to do to do that. So can we get into step number 1?
Well, now that we know what financial freedom is, there's a formula that goes into that, right? Now, by coincidence, the formula is in an acronym that we're going to walk everybody through here to say, how do we actually do the step-by-step process to actually get here? Because a lot of people kind of jump around with all these different strategies because they see people making money and they go a long way down a path. And just as they get right near success, they see someone else do a completely different thing and they jump ship. And so they never actually make it. So what we want to do is we want to concentrate people down on a single path, stick to that path. And if you can stick to that path, then you're going to accelerate this much, much faster.
Okay.
So
what I'm hearing is if you're going to do it, commit.
Commit. Yeah. And there's only particular strategies that will actually allow you to do this in a very efficient, time-effective way.
And what's the first step in our formula?
So it's in an acronym. So formula F is finances. So the first thing we want to do is actually understand our current position. So there's a whole bunch of things that we want to look at. So we touched on before, what do we actually need to understand to become financially free? What's our current budget? What's it actually costing us to live right here, right now?
Okay, so that's 70 grand, 120 grand, whatever it is.
Whatever that is. So that is our end point that we're actually trying to get to. We want enough passive income out of this process that at the end of the process, that can actually be generating positive income out of a property that we're going to hold.
And how much detail do you go into with that? Do you index that and go, okay, well, we're thinking about having kids, private schools, stuff like that? Or do you just kind of go like, do the numbers on now?
Well, you're going to do the numbers on now, but if you've got known outcomes that are coming, so if your kids are right at the point of leaving the nest, then a lot of your expenses could suddenly disappear. If they're just getting into the nest, then and you're going to send them to private school, it could be ratcheting up. So you've got to put a little bit of future pacing into that. But you need to understand, I guess, where you think you're going to be in 5 years' time.
And when it comes to doing numbers, what are some of the big tips that you've got for people? Because I'd imagine sometimes people could do them with a bit of rose-colored glasses on of what we'd like rather than what is. Is there any advice that you've got for people when they are running through this?
Yeah, most people are going to just pluck a number out of thin air and go, this is what I want to earn. My guidance is, what is it actually costing you to live? Look at your bills.
Okay, so look at the gas, look at the electricity, the mortgage. Yep.
The fuel in the car, I guess sending the kids to school, food on the table, all those sorts of things. What's it actually costing you to live? And be real.
Okay.
There's plenty of time for all the niceties after you're financially free. When you've got your time on your hands, then you can choose, do I want to keep working and add more wealth, or do I want to actually travel the world? Do I want to solve world hunger? What is the thing that I want to do? But you've got to get yourself financially free before you can do any of that.
All right. So we're sitting down, we're being really honest with ourselves, what we actually spend, what the next however many years are going to look like. We'll look down the road if the kids are leaving, staying, the no kids, whatever it is. What are we doing from there once we really clearly understand that picture?
Well, that's where we want to go. But where are we right now?
Okay.
So in order to do any deal, there are three kinds of cash that you actually need. You need a deposit to purchase the property. You need serviceability to fund the debt. And you need liquid cash to run the deal.
Okay.
So those three, you need to do a self-assessment and go, where am I currently positioned with any of those three? Now that I know where I'm at, what kind of deal do I need to structure? What kind of creative solution do I need to put in place to make this happen? If I happen to be fully loaded and I've got all those things in a row, then I might be able to cash my own deal. But if I'm not, I might need some creative solutions to get there. So now I understand what are the things I need to learn in order to solve that problem. Don't let your lack of resources stop you from being resourceful.
Okay, so I like that. So if you're looking at your situation and you're like, all right, deposit-wise, maybe I'm sitting on a ton of equity. I'm good. Serviceability, my job is maybe not as high a paying, whatever it is, and I don't have huge amounts of cash in the bank. So you go, those are the two I'm going to focus on, serviceability and liquid cash, but the deposit's pretty good, just for a scenario.
As an example.
Yeah.
Right? Now, there's a couple of different ways that we can solve that particular problem. What if you never buy the property in the first place?
Okay, so you're talking about like optioning or like...
Well, you could do an option as an example. You could do a joint venture with the landowner. You could do a joint venture with a money partner. So it's not you purchasing the property, it might be somebody else. Okay. So you're going to use their resources. So you're going to still make money, but you may have to share some of the profits with somebody else.
So you've got a better picture of your deposit, serviceability, and also your liquid cash position. So you can plug the holes.
You can plug the holes. So now what we're starting to build is a little bit like a GPS. We know where we are. We know where we want to go. Now what we need to do is put a plan in place to see how do we get from A to B.
All right. And is that when we're moving on from F?
That's when we're moving on from F.
What's the next letter?
The next letter is O for opportunity.
O for opportunity.
So the opportunity is, well, what is the development strategy that I want to learn in order to manufacture the profits out of this process?
And for anyone listening thinking, what do you mean development strategy? Development's development.
Well, development is a very big, broad term that allows you to force value onto a property through any process that involves your skill and effort. So you say renovation. Renovation is a form of development because you're forcing equity, you're forcing value onto the property, your skills, your effort. But there's a ton of different development strategies, a ton of them. But there's only two of them that are scalable, and that's the key to this. And when I say scalable, how do I start with a small project where I can learn the skills and then apply those same skills again in a slightly bigger deal and learn from the lessons I learned from the previous project, the good and the bad, and go, how do I get better at this? And as you start to get better at it, as you step up your deal sizes, you're going to get more efficient, more effective, and you're going to start to scale.
I've got to ask, what are those two?
Oh, of course you would. So subdivisions is the first one. So with a subdivision, you can do a 1 into 2, you can do 1 into 4, 1 into 10, 1 into 20. You can build an entire suburb. You can build an entire city. Now there's one gentleman, Maha Sinnathamby, who did one deal and is a billionaire. He built the city of Springfield.
One of your students?
No. I wish. I wouldn't be here if that was the case, mate. So you can scale that big. He built the entire city of Springfield in just outside of Ipswich.
So what you mean by scalability?
Absolutely. Yeah. The next one is multi-res. Now, multi-res is anything where there's multiple apartments on the one title. So it could be units or it could be townhouses, but they fundamentally have the same principles that sit behind them. So I could do a duplex, 4-pack, 6-pack, and scale. So one, we scale out, and the other one, we scale up. So if we're doing apartments, we might do apartments on ground floor, and then we might do 2 stories, 5 stories, 10 stories. So it's really, are we scaling out or scaling up?
So it's like once you know how to build a 2-story apartment building, you kind of know how to build a 5-story apartment building. And I imagine there's probably some differences that go with this, but
well, there are differences, but the bulk of it is the same.
Yeah.
So a 2-story, I guess you're going to get, design and car parking and where's the bin enclosures go and turning circles and a few things like that. Mm-hmm. When you go to 5 stories, you're going to start to go, well, now I need to do lift wells and circulation space and, might need to do some fire sprinkler systems and that sort of thing.
Maybe there's an underground garage now.
There might be, I guess, a basement car park.
Yep.
As you start to go up, then now I'm going to put lifts in. So you're just adding one extra piece to the problem. Similarly with a subdivision, you do a 1 into 2, and you've got to put water and sewer and stormwater and all those sorts of things in. As you start to scale up, you might do a shared driveway with a community title. Mm-hmm. Then as you scale up again, you might do a road. As you scale up again, you might do a detention basin. As you scale up again, you might do a bio-detention basin. So you're really using a lot of the previous skills, and then you just add one other problem. So it's easy to learn one extra skill for the next deal. So follow the course.
And you've learnt like 100% on 1 into 2, but then when you go to the 1 into 4 or whatever, and you need to build a driveway, you're just learning the extra 5% of putting the driveway down.
Correct.
I get you. Yeah, okay, that makes perfect sense. But if you're going little which way and everywhere because you haven't picked a strategy that you want to actually stick with, then you've gone from apartments to subdivisions to everything. You're restarting that clock.
Yep. And where I see other people out there teaching these sorts of lessons, they say, well, start with a renovation and earn some cash, and then then move to a subdivision and earn a bit more cash, and then move to townhouses after that. And the reason why they're doing that is because they've got a course on how to do a renovation. They've got a course on how to do a subdivision. They've got a course on how to do townhouses. Mm-hmm. So it's just a way of generating more money for them, whereas it's not very efficient and very effective for that person to say, well, how do I learned some great skills out of that project. How do I just reapply those and get better at it?
Keep doing the thing that I'm actually good at.
Yeah. Correct.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So you're looking for the opportunity. You're going to stay in one skill set that you want to sharpen. Figure out what that is. How do you figure out what that is?
Well, there's a whole bunch of things called money rules. Okay. So money rules are questions that you've got to ask yourself for a self-assessment as to what is the likelihood of you actually being able to take that project through to completion based on your starting point.
Okay.
Right. So the money rule might be, how long can I wait for a payday? Mm-hmm. So if you can't wait 3 years for a payday, by the time you learn the skills, find the deal, run the deal, then you probably can't do a townhouse project because it's going to take you that long to learn it and then execute it before the payday happens. But if you need a payday in 12 months, then you might want to start with a subdivision, for example, and you might exit that as land because you don't have to go through the construction process. So where you're starting might impact that.
Okay. So and this is coming back to F being step number 1, because the clearer picture you've got on your own finances at the very beginning.
Correct. You know what your starting position is. You know what your constraints are. It doesn't have to be your money. If you've got a network of people that are really well connected, if you're really well connected to doctors and lawyers and people with a lot of cash, then maybe that's not such a big deal.
Okay.
Right. But if you're not really connected and, you're you're living out in the burbs and you've got nobody with high net wealth, you're going to have to do it. You don't have to do the hard yards, or go and, I guess, find a network of people that you can start to connect with and do the hard work to actually build that community.
Where does the interest level come into it? Do you ever like really push that if someone's like super keen on one strategy? Do you look at that and think, okay, that enthusiasm is going to potentially get them somewhere extra?
That's part of the money rules. Some people just have a pure passion for things. Some people want to do the creative process. I love the creative design process that goes into a townhouse. That might be one of their criteria. Mm-hmm. So I really want that. Now, if that's the case, they might have a few more hurdles that they have to overcome, but at least they know the path now that they have to solve. They know the problems they need to solve to get there. Now, other people are completely opposite. They don't want the risk associated with that. They go, no, I don't want the extra expense that comes with the construction side. I want to just do this nice, easy churn and burn where I can just sell land, right? Because I don't want the hassle. You know, when you do your pros and cons, it's going to lean towards one or the other. Now, they both work. Mm-hmm. Isn't it? It's no issue as one is better than the other. They're just different. And when you understand what's different and the pros and cons of that, then you're going to say, well, I've now got more of an alignment from one to the other.
What's your preference?
Me personally, I like land subdivisions.
Okay. Any particular reason, or do you just you enjoy the process more?
Because the flexibility of the exit strategy. So I can sell it as land. I can sell it as house and land. I can sell it with a brand new house on it. I can sell one as a brand new house and one as vacant land. So I've got a lot of flexibility in how I exit it. So as market cycles change, I can flex with the market and go, what do I want to do here? Now with a townhouse project, for example, I've got two exit strategies. I build all of them or I build none of them. Right? I can't build a townhouse and leave the rest of it for somebody else. It doesn't work.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
So having those multiple exit strategies gives you a bit more confidence in if the market changes, situation changes, you're like, I've got multiple ways I can get out of this.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
So I can reduce my risk, sell a couple off the plan just as vacant land, roll the cash over, do a couple of builds on the other ones, that sort of thing.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else about step 2 that you wanted to cover before we get to step 3?
Yeah. So that's finding what your strategy is first is great. But now how do we then apply that strategy to then achieve the outcome of getting from A to B? So we did an assessment in the F. Mm-hmm. We've got to build a 5-year roadmap of what are the projects I'm going to do? How do I start to scale my projects? How do I start small, learn the skills, and then step up a deal size to get to a point where I can actually keep a property owned outright? So you're going to build a plan. How do I put that together?
Okay, that's
part of the opportunity is building that 5-year plan.
Gotcha. All right. So we're looking at this now we know exactly where we are, we know where we want to be, and then the opportunity is really putting the dots together of how we're going to get there.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Knowing that the outcome is to have a passively owned property at the end. Now there's a magic formula as to how do I own a property outright with no debt.
Is this the developing 20% margin, selling off 4?
This is exactly that. So there's a magic number. So I'm going to ask a preloaded question to you.
Okay.
Todd, what is the stereotypical profit on cost that most developers are aiming for?
20%.
20%. So if I use a 20% as my magic marker, then if I do a 6-pack of something, if I sell 5, it pays the costs, which means that the 6th one is owned free and clear. Mm-hmm. Now, if the 6th one is owned free and clear, there's a whole bunch of benefits that come with that. Firstly, I didn't sell it, which means I didn't realize the profit. Mm-hmm. So if I don't realize the profit, I have effectively deferred my tax until some point in the future where I may or may not sell that.
Okay.
Now, why would I sell it if it's going to be 100% positively geared, giving me a whole bunch of cash forever? So effectively, I get to keep 100% of the profit in the deal. That's opportunity number 1.
Yeah. Okay.
So, or benefit number 1. If I can keep that property outright, firstly, 100% positively geared, which means that there's no debt sitting on it. Every ounce of cash that it earns, other than property management fees, then becomes cash flow into my pocket. Now, subject to where I'm owning it and what kind of stock, it's going to earn somewhere between 25 and 30K a year, typically if it's either a basic townhouse or a small house. Mm-hmm. Okay. If I can generate 30K a year and I only need 80K to become financially free, I only need 3 houses owned outright.
Okay. So one of the things I'm thinking here then is when you are looking for, I'm probably skipping ahead. So if you want to put a pin in this and come back to it, just say the word. But I've been told something that was actually quite recent that I'd never looked at it this way before, but it was for someone developing. Now I think they were doing a 1 into 2 and then they sold one, kept one. And basically we're told, would you buy that today as an investment property? And I think it was worth 600 grand renting for 450 a week, something along those lines. And they were like, no, the yield's probably a bit too low for me. If you're going to implement that kind of strategy, when you are searching, if the goal is keeping it, do you make sure then as well, you've got all of those boxes ticked of like, this is a good yielding location for me too. This is good. Like,
well, so this is a deviation, but I will go down this rabbit hole because I think it's worthwhile and then we'll come back. If you're doing a buy and hold investment, then you're only going to purchase for 2 reasons, capital growth or cash flow. Okay. And you should be assessing that up front. If you're doing a development, you're doing it for the manufactured profit. And then the outcome of how well it works at the end, if it's not the best cash flow, it's still free cash flow.
Okay.
Right? If it's not the best capital growth, it's still capital growth. You manufactured this out of thin air, right? So you want to go where I can manufacture that profit out of thin air. And if I don't get the capital growth, it doesn't really matter that much because the cash flow is more important to me. Because you can't eat an asset. You can only eat cash.
Unless you're developing gingerbread houses.
Yeah, well, okay. Yeah. You could do that. So later on, you've got opportunities if you really want to. You could sell that down and go buy in the area that you really want to if that's the case. But you're going to have transaction costs.
Okay, so you're basically looking at this as like, yeah, even if it is a 4% yield, maybe you'd like to get a 5 or a 6% yield, whatever it is. Who cares? Because it's an unencumbered 4.
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay.
Now, I mentioned multiple benefits. So the first one is we didn't realize our profit, so we're not paying tax today. Now, it's not tax avoidance, it's tax deferral. 20 years, 30 years, we might sell it. We might give it to the kids. Maybe they pay the tax. Not my problem. Later on. That's future Rob's problem, right?
Okay.
The next thing, completely unencumbered, so 100% positive cash flow. Completely unencumbered, which means that it's now an asset that if I want to scale, I can use that as equity to secure the next deal, which would be temporarily while I do that deal. So I might temporarily borrow against it or put a mortgage against it to scale up my deal size. But at the end of that next project, I then just pay the debt back.
Okay.
So I'm going up in my net wealth. I'm also going up in my cash flow. Now, the big question is, how do I do that magic formula of 6? So today, you don't know how to do 6. So let's learn how to do a smaller version of that. Let's learn how to do a 4. Don't know how to do a 4. Let's do a smaller version of that. Learn how to do a 2, which is why the scalability thing is so important. So within 3 deals, I could go a 2, a 4, and a 6, and then keep an asset owned outright.
Okay.
Whereas everyone else is trying, I'm going to collect 3 properties, and they're going to have 80% and loan to value ratio on those, and they've got serviceability issues, and they've had to come up with deposits and all sorts of things like that. So we're just recycling that debt in the early days until we can own it outright.
So I feel like instead of your focus being on, is this the best area to double, is like the long-term capital growth side, your focus is more so on how do we add enough value to something that we can basically own it outright?
Correct.
Okay. All right.
So we're going where the demand is for people wanting to move today based on the city is growing. Where are the people moving to? What opportunity can we put in front of them before they realize they need it? So predicting where population growth is going.
So opportunity. What does that take us to then on number 3?
So we've now mapped out our 5-year plan of what that deal trajectory is going to be.
Yep.
And we're going to choose deal number 1 because we can't do deal number 5 until we've learnt how to do deal number 1.
Yep.
So the first thing we're going to do now is to say, where can I find deal number 1? So the R is the research. So I'm now going to start to research, where does that deal work? Now, what most people do is they look at this backwards. They find the area first, and then they try and ram the strategy they want into the area, and they wonder why they can't find a deal. What we want to do is the other way around. I'm looking for a very specific deal and a very specific deal size. Where does that work? So our research is going to be, I want to find an area with lots of opportunity where there's lots of sites that actually meet the criteria that I'm looking for. I want to find evidence that other people are doing exactly what I want to do because I want to cookie cutter someone else, let them de-risk the process. let me find proof that they're being profitable in the process. So that development life cycle, we're going to find an area where we're in that sweet spot of that life cycle.
Okay.
So proof that those people are being profitable and proof that there's still enough juice left in that life cycle that we can do our deal as well.
So once we've found that proof, we're starting to do our research. We're really looking into detail that we're not forcing our idea onto a market. We're finding where the idea that we want actually fits into a market.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Like if you're dating, you can try and change someone into what you want, or you can just find someone that is what you want. Like
you can't change anyone.
This is what I mean. Like it's the same kind of thing of like, that's not going to end well.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So as far as the research component's concerned, what else do you normally see people maybe not doing well and really needing to sharpen up?
Well, in that research phase, a lot of people look at the fact that there's activity in an area doing the thing that they want to do, and they assume that activity equals profit. The life cycle says that there's a phase where every deal in the area is going to make money, and there's a phase where there's still activity happening, but people are trying to protect themselves because they're about to lose their backside. And so you're going to see lots of activity, but that doesn't represent profit necessarily.
Yeah, just because it's happening doesn't actually mean people are making money.
Yeah, just because it can be done doesn't mean it should be done. 90% of all development sites are not profitable.
90%?
90.
That's insane, Rob. Like, who's making money out of this stuff? Why is it happening?
Well, the 10% are, mate.
Oh, yeah, that's a good answer. Okay, when you're saying, I just want to dig into that for 2 seconds. Is that more like mum and dad's getting excited, again, to reference the bell curve we talked about in a previous episode, all sort of jumping in on the end? Or does that still apply to like towers and like full-on land subdivisions?
It applies to everything. Now, from a life cycle perspective, every suburb goes through the exact same pattern. So no deals are happening in an area, and one person speculates. Now, they could be doing that with a whole bunch of research and knowledge and years of experience, or they could just be rolling the dice. But there's no evidence at all of the proof point of what the finished product is going to be. That person's the market maker. So they're the one who are just testing the market to see whether or not the deal is going to make sense.
Okay.
Following that person is some early adopters. They see the market maker making money, and they go, we can make money too. We're smart. We know what we're doing. So they pile in.
Okay, so the market maker's the edge of the bell.
Yep.
Then early adopters are what?
As we start to go up the curve, Joe Public starts seeing all this activity happening in their area and go, hey, I'm getting super excited. These people are making money. We can make money too. Now they're less educated and they're more emotionally invested in the process. So they don't understand the actual costs that go into a process. So they start chasing the deal and they quite often overpay. So then you get to the top of the bell curve and then the deals don't make sense anymore. And so you see activity on the way up, everyone's making money. You see activity on the way down, everyone's trying to protect their assets.
All right. So as far as the proof side of things in our research, when
we're looking for that sweet spot where there's enough early adopters, we can cookie cutter what they're doing, but before Joe Public gets in and starts paying too much.
Which is potentially that 90% that we were just referencing.
Which is why the research phase is so important. So we call that the suburb selection process. And we plug if I can buy on average, run an average deal and sell on average, would on average I make money? So I no longer have to beat up a little old lady to get an under market deal.
I'm so tired of beating up old ladies.
Well,
it's good to know. I don't know where to take that, Rob.
I'm going to leave that alone.
Anyway, all right. So we're not going to prison. So the research phase, obviously so critical for this. But what are we moving to next after we've researched? And let's say we've done it correctly.
So we've found an area with lots of opportunities where we know if we can buy on average, the deal's going to make sense. Now, because there's lots of opportunities, we now need to start farming the opportunities. So the M is the method. So how do I look at more deals in less time? So it's the rapid elimination method. So this is a process that I invented that looks at the deal very differently to everybody else.
How so?
Most people are looking for a reason to keep the deal.
Okay.
I'm looking for a reason to throw it away. By knowing how a deal is actually assessed by council, I can then start to look at what are the constraints that apply to a property and find a reason to throw it away rather than trying to justify keeping the deal. Because most people will spend days or weeks analysing a site to then go, nah, it doesn't work, because they're trying to force the deal to work. But if I'm looking the opposite, in 10 minutes, I can throw a deal away because I can see that it's never going to make it.
I feel like even just from a mindset perspective, that would help.
Yep.
Because then if, like you said, if you are looking for why it works, you could let a bit of emotion in there to be like, oh, I really want this one to work. But if your focus is like, no, let's try and prove these wrong, and you're excited when it doesn't get proved wrong, because then it means it's stacking up, it's good.
Yeah. So we have a 3-stage toll gate that we go through. So just because the first stage is 10 minutes. So just because it passes that 10-minute check doesn't mean it's a deal. It just means it justifies that I spend more time on it. Okay. So, but my ideal outcome is throw it away, and then only spend time on the ones that qualify.
Hence, rapid elimination method. Okay.
Now, in order to do that, there's a basic core premise that we need to understand, and that is there's an order of hierarchy with regards to how a deal is actually assessed by council. So the zoning, which is what every real estate agent sells us on, the zoning is the maximum potential that a site can achieve.
Okay.
But there's a whole bunch of constraints that might apply that will tell you whether or not that maximum outcome can ever be achieved. So there's things like an overlay, there's things like easements and covenants, the contours of the site, where the services are located. All these things start to become, hey, I can actually never physically achieve that outcome. So if we just look for what are the things that are showstoppers, what are the things that are deal killers, I can chuck that away really quick. And I don't need to go, what is the profitability of the deal? I can just go, hey, that's got a flood overlay on it. It doesn't make sense. Or that's got a heritage protection, or that's got, the services are located in 100 kilometers down the road. It's going to take me too much to drag the services there. When we start to look at those things, we go, well, the deal just doesn't make sense.
You said there was 3 steps. Is that in step number 1, the 10 minutes, or is that the next one?
10 minutes, we're just looking at, can I chuck it away?
Okay.
Right. And because we did, I guess, the research phase before, we know typically what we're going to be buying it for. We know typically what we're going to be running a deal for. We know typically what we're going to sell it for. In that 10 minutes, we can do a rough order of magnitude feasibility to say, and the back of the envelope feasibility to say, are we within range of this thing being profitable or not? Now, we don't have to be down to the dollar accurate at this point. We just need to be close enough to justify, do I want to spend more time? Now, if I'm looking for, say, $200,000 profit, does it really matter if it's $180,000 or $190,000 profit? What matters is, hey, it's not $50,000.
Yeah.
Right. So we're just trying to go, am I within that ballpark of profitability to justify it?
Okay.
Now, at this point, I'm now going to spend 2 hours. Now, in that 2 hours, I'm going to assess everything about that site, understand every single issue, challenge, and problem that needs to be solved on that deal. And this is where a lot of people get their feasibilities wrong, because they don't know how to do a site assessment correctly. They don't know how to identify the issues, challenges, and problems. And so they miss problems on a site. And if you miss the problem, then you don't put a line item in your feasibility that accounts for the cost of that problem. So in that 2 hours, we want to assess everything. We want to get really, really good at this, which is why it's super important that we only concentrate on one strategy. So we get very good at assessing that particular strategy. We also want to do one council, because even in that strategy, 537 councils means 537 different ways of doing that same thing. So the frontage is different between councils. The setbacks are different between councils. The land size is different between councils. So
charges are different.
Charges are different. All this. So we want to do one strategy, one council. And then if we can then narrow that down to say, I want to find 3 suburbs where there's lots of opportunity, where every deal starts to make sense. Now I can start to become an area expert. Now I can start to assess these deals super quick. And so within 2 hours, if I've locked those 3 things down, a strategy expert, a council expert, and an area expert, then within 2 hours, I'm comfortable enough, because I've done enough of these deal assessments, that I can take this thing through to contract, which is then when phase 3 starts to kick in.
Yep.
Phase 3 is our due diligence phase. So this is where hard cash hits the road to say, hey, I've made this assessment. I want to now talk to my consultants to justify that my assessment was correct, and sanity check that I didn't make any mistakes.
I lived in a hotel for about 7 years. and I used to go to the sauna all the time. I met heaps of interesting people there. One guy was a day trader, and this is before I really like fell in love with property. And I used to pick his brains all the time. And he told me, he's like, I want you to paper trade for 6 months. He's like, before you do even $1, like nothing, just paper trade. That way you'll get the feel of it. Do you have any kind of a similar like recommendation for people of like how many FISOs you should be doing first before it's like, no, I've got this. I really understand this.
Typically you need to look at about 300 deals before you'll actually lock in a deal.
Okay.
And you're going to make a lot of mistakes in doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So in our program, we don't let anybody in unless they're willing to put at least 15 hours a week into the process, because it's going to take you that long to do justice to the process. And even at 15 hours a week, after 6 months, you'll be competent, i.e. you know what you're doing, but you won't be confident, and you're going to make mistakes and you're going to second guess yourself. Mm-hmm. The only way to stop that is to do the paper trade. You need to assess more deals. You need to make more offers. You need to get to the negotiation table and stuff up a few negotiations. Every single one of those losses is all paper-based. The only money you lose is the deal that you get into that's a dud deal.
Mm.
Right? So up until then, you make a mistake on your site assessment, doesn't matter.
Education.
If you make a mistake on your negotiation, you say the wrong thing, doesn't matter. You didn't get the deal, so you didn't lose any money. The only thing you lost is a little bit of pride and a little bit of time.
But you learned a lot.
Yep. So yes, paper trade.
I like it. So 10 minutes, 2 hours, and then a proper detailed looking into it.
Proper due diligence, and that is whatever it takes.
Okay.
Now, most people do the whatever it takes up front, and I've seen people take weeks doing a site assessment to get to a point where, hey, I'm ready to make an offer, and somebody's already snapped it up.
Yeah.
Or to get to a point where, no, it's not really a deal, and they go look at the next one. So it's taken them weeks to look at one opportunity, whereas in 10 minutes, right, we've thrown it away at the same site.
It's like assembly line kind of theory.
Yep.
Like, yeah. Okay. Is there anything else about method on step 4 before we move on to step 5?
No, so it's how do we fast track that? So now we've determined we're in an area with developable and profitable. We've assessed every single deal in the area.
Yep.
We've negotiated terms. Now we want to get you under contract.
You under contract.
Now, under contract has a whole bunch of things that start to come into play. So firstly, what kind of contract do we want to do? Is it going to be a standard contract? Is it going to be a joint venture? Is it going to be an option contract? Is it delayed settlement with early access? Lots of different ways of actually structuring that deal, which comes all the way back to that F when we did that self-assessment. What kind of deal did we need to do in order to get ourselves there? So we've had to assess the kind of deal we need to do because we've got these shortfalls in our financial circumstances.
So deposit, serviceability, liquid cash.
All that sorts. So there's only certain criteria that are going to work. Then there's also, well, if I've got other people involved in that, what's the structure? Is it a joint venture? We might have to have some hybrid entity structure. So is it a company? Is it a trust? Is it a combination of those? So we're going to deal with our accountant. We're going to deal with our solicitor to actually work out what our structuring is going to be. We also need to work out how we're going to fund that. Is it going to be residential funding? Is it going to be commercial funding? Or is it going to be private investors that are coming in and helping us? Or is it a combination of all of those? So we've got all the pieces from the previous steps in a jigsaw puzzle that are kind of strewn all over the table. What we're now trying to do is turn those pieces over and actually put them together and form a picture.
And so the under contract thing, it sounds like a lot of that comes back to really financing, but I don't want to stuff up your acronym though.
No, it's not all about financing, but financing has a big influence on that.
Okay. Can you expand that a little bit? Because I want to make sure I'm following here, because the way that you were describing it, maybe I've understood you wrong. It sounded like it was a lot about plugging the 3 holes of the deposit, serviceability, liquid cash. Like, how is this all going to be structured? If that's all sorted out beforehand,
there are ingredients in there, but they're not the only ingredients.
Okay.
So the vendor trying to sell the deal also has needs. So what are the needs that they need to achieve? So they might have some specific things that says, well, I'm only going to work with a certain kind of deal. So for example, if they want certainty and they want cash today, they're only ever going to want a contract that is an upfront contract, short settlement, standard contract.
Okay.
If they want maximum cash return, they've got time on their hands, they're open to a little bit of risk in order to get the higher reward, they might do an option contract, they might do a delayed settlement with early access, they might do some other creative finance type solutions. So we need to assess not just the deal, but the person who's selling the deal. What is their circumstances? Why are they selling it? What's the outcome they're trying to achieve? And then we want to match their criteria with our criteria.
I see what you're saying now.
Yep. And then we structure the deal together to go, okay, rightio, we need to put these pieces together to make that happen.
So we've got the deal. We've done our 10 minutes, our 2 hours. We've done our full FISO. We've looked at it and we've like, okay, this is ticking the boxes. We understand where the holes are in the bucket that we've plugged as far as our deposit serviceability and our liquid cash. We've plugged those. We now know what the vendor wants. We've made sure that we're not telling them what we want, trying to like Donald Trump bash the desk kind of negotiation. This is very much like win-win. How do we create this deal? We've got a contract now that gives them what they want, gives us what we want. I'm assuming. I'm fast forwarding.
Absolutely.
Yep. Okay. Where do we go from here?
L, logistics.
L.
We've got to run the deal now. So what is the project management process that we need to go through to actually get this deal from concept through to completion? So we've got to go through the development approval phase. We've got to go through the building approval phase. We've got to go through sales processes. We've got to take this through to, I guess, the exit strategy that we have in mind. We've got to look at multiple exit strategies. We've got a preferred path A that we want to get out. We also want to have exit strategy B and C just in case things go against us. Market changes, circumstances changes. You might be in a joint venture with someone. Maybe they get hit by a bus. Maybe they have medical conditions. You need to know, well, if we can't take this through to completion because they can no longer finance the deal, can I exit that safely and still make profit? So there's the preferred path, and then there's the, well, can I live with the consequences of plan B and plan C if that happens to come in front of us?
Have you figured that out in step 4 method?
Well, you've got a whole bunch of the ingredients of that together, but you have to look at the deal on its own criteria.
Okay, because so you can't figure it out in step 4 until you've gone to step 5, which is under contract, because you don't actually have the complete picture of the deal.
You don't have the complete picture. You've got a concept of what that deal will look like.
Gotcha.
So you can, I guess, if you've got a money partner, you can kind of plan out, look, this is our preferred approach. This is where we want to take this all the way through to construction, for example. But if the market changes, then are we happy to exit this as a DA approved site, or are we happy to exit this as maybe we're going to need to construct half of the properties, not all the properties?
And so is that something that you also have on your timeline, your Gantt chart of like, okay, when we get to this point, let's check in and make sure that everything's still lined up.
Yep. So they're milestones. So the milestone is an opportunity to sit down with whoever might be involved in the deal and say, like, our intention is to take it through to the end. This is where we're at. Everything's looking good. Look left, look right. Are we going to cross the road? And if it's all good, you keep going. If it's not good, then you go, well, plan B was this. Is this the time to execute plan B?
I'm just looking at like milestones that I'd put in a renovation project and thinking like, you get to halfway through the renovation project and go, all right, it's a milestone. Should we sell it now, guys? Probably not.
There's no kitchen.
All right. So logistics, we're basically making sure that we've actually got you want to know you've got the skill set beforehand, but it is actually executing on those skills of making everything happen. You're actually bringing this project to life.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about on logistics before we get to step 7?
Well, part of those logistics and part of those exit strategies are, again, looping back to the bits that you did right at the start with the F, right? So if you don't have the finances to take it through to completion, you may only be able to exit as vacant land, for example.
Okay.
Or you might exit one as vacant land, roll the cash over and construct on another one.
Yeah, okay.
So there's a few different criteria that you're taking all the steps that you did at the start and you kind of assembling, you kind of creating the recipe to actually cook the cake.
But this is all depending on which strategy you choose to specialize in as well.
Correct. So there's constraints in that.
Right. What's step number 7?
A, accelerate. So what we're going to do here is we've got some runs on the board. We've learned some skills. We've got a deal that we've learned some good and bad from. We want to get better and better at that process. We want to loop back to our 5-year plan. What does deal number 2 look like? And we want to step up our deal size. Okay, we want to apply the skills we've just learned, and do deal number 2. But in doing so, our financial circumstances have changed. How much cash we've actually got in the bank is different to where we were at the start of deal number 1. Now, we may have completed deal number 1 and we might be fully cashed up now. We might be midway through deal number 1 when we find deal number 2, in which case we may actually be in a worse financial position to start with. So we may have to get more creative in that solution. But either way, we want to step up our deal size. We don't want to wait till that first project is 100% complete, because otherwise we do everything in series and it takes a long time. We want to do deals in parallel. How do we do more deals with less money, get really, really creative in that solution?
When do you know you're ready for multiples?
You just have a kind of a confidence level that comes from actually having done enough deal assessments to go, actually, I know what I'm doing here.
I can spin a few plates.
You can spin a few plates. Now, the first time you spin a plate, it's wobbly, but once you've got it, you've got it. Deals start to materialize in front of you. You see opportunities that you didn't see before.
Well, I guess you're looking at the world through a different lens.
Correct.
So we're making sure our finances are right. Step number 1.
So we're looping all the way back to the F, and we're going to go through the formula again. So we're reassessing our financial circumstances because that's changed.
So this is a big wheel.
Correct. It's a big wheel.
Okay.
So then we go back to the opportunity. We've stepped up to our second deal. We're then going to go to research. We're looking for where does deal number 2 make sense, which might be a completely different place to where deal number 1 made sense. Where a 4-pack of townhouses work or a 4-lot subdivision might be completely different to where a duplex works. So we've got to find where does the right land size and the right zoning and the right frontage and that sort of thing, where are there lots of opportunities for that?
Or maybe in the time that you'd started and completed this deal, you've actually now started coming down the other side of the bell curve and it's like, actually, wait, this area doesn't even work anymore.
Absolutely. So there might be that as well.
And you just keep spinning through this wheel until you get to that goal of the 70 grand, 150 grand, whatever it is.
Yep. Now, what's super important, we spoke about the development life cycle before.
Yeah.
For deal number 1, there's heaps of evidence of people doing those small deals. And so we get to see the full bell curve of everything actually happening. When we step up a deal size, there's less opportunities around there for those bigger deals. There's less people with cash to run those deals. There's less people with skills to do those deals. So there's less evidence of watching other people do it. So if we haven't built our skills in reading that market up front, then we don't know how to build that gut instinct. What we want to be this time around is we want to be the early adopter. So we don't want to be the market maker, but we want to be the early adopter. We've seen the pattern. We know what the pattern looks like. We don't need the complete picture because we know where it's going to go. But now we can start to confidently go, well, I can step up a deal size.
Do you ever want to be market maker?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When you step up another deal size again.
And how step up? Are we talking like Triggenboff step up? Or are we talking like what?
Triggenboff's always the market maker. Let's right. But it doesn't take much to be the market maker, right? So a 6-pack is in that market maker / early adopter territory, right? A 10-pack definitely, right? You're almost certainly going to be the only one who's done that in recent history, right? So remember, if we're trying to do comparative market sales, we want sales that are 3 months old. Did somebody do a 10-pack 3 months ago? Probably not. Market's different. So we're continually remaking the market.
Okay.
So hence we need to get those gut instincts strong and correct in those small deals, which is why reapplying the same project over and over and over means that we can learn those skills, we can read that market better, and each time we step up, we're going to get more efficient, more effective.
So this is the 7 steps to financial freedom. But I guess it can keep, like you said, continuing. So whether you do this 3 times, it's the 21 steps, whatever it is, but this is going to start getting sharper and sharper for you as you go along.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So starting with the finance, then we're looking at...
Then the opportunity, then the research, then the method, then the under contract, then the logistics, then the accelerate. We go into a lot more detail of that in a free course that we actually give away. People want to go to freecourse.com.au.
Yep.
We go into this in a lot more detail and we visualize it and a whole bunch of things like that, which is really going to take this to another level. But
we'll put the link in the show notes somewhere as well.
Absolutely.
Yep.
But the concept is really simple to grasp. The effort is hard.
Which brings me to the action step. Let's say someone's listened to this and they're going, no, I'm still on board. This is sounding like what I've been looking for. What's an action step that they can pull out the headphones right now and put straight into practice?
Well, the first thing is to start to go, which strategy do I want to actually start to align myself with?
So start researching.
Yeah. So remember, there's only 2 paths that are actually going to be scalable. Lots of development strategies out there, but only 2 paths that are scalable. So which one resonates well with you? Start asking yourself the question, what's my risk profile? How much cash have I actually got to go into this? How long can I wait for a payday? And then start to go, okay, well, I can turn up to, one of Rob's monthly meetups and I can see people doing those exact deals. We'd have a real deal that's presented at every single one of our every single one of our meetups. I can start to watch what other people have done, learn the lessons that they've done and go, does that actually resonate with me? Do I feel good about that? Can I see the kind of problems that need to be solved and does that fit? That's a easy, low cost, low effort process to go, is this the right fit for me as a person?
I like that. It's something that you can do with a bit of time. It's not going to cost you anything.
Yep.
But you can get into it straight away.
Yep. And we've been running these meetups for 11 years and we record every single one of them. We run events pretty much every week of the year with some minor exceptions around Christmas, New Year. So there's years and years and years of back catalogue of recordings of all those real deals that people go and look at and reverse engineer other people's deals and go, is that a good fit for me?
You're flying around the country a lot, aren't you?
I do.
You got a jet yet?
No.
Soon.
No, I don't think I ever want a jet. No. I like the convenience of turning up and taking someone else's jet.
Okay. Mate, I've asked you before. I'm going to ask you again because it's been a long time. Rob Flux, arguably the most important question of the entire show. What is your favorite pizza?
What is my favorite? I like the Super Supreme with barbecue sauce.
Super Supreme with barbecue sauce. Are you getting this anywhere special or are you home cooking?
No, it has. Well, I'm not so good at the home cooking part because I tend to get a soggy base. I want a crispy base. So I'm going to take it somewhere that's going to be wood fired. It's got to be done proof.
So like proper, you're not Domino's or anything?
No. I want a pizza. I don't want dough.
Oh, mate, it's always good chatting with you, Rob. I'm sure you're going to jump on the show again soon, mate. But I think this is an episode that this is one that people are going to listen to twice because I know when we go through the edit of this, I feel like I've got a whole book of notes in front of me and I'm still going to be picking out bits that's like, oh, wait a second. Yeah, that's a good point. There is so much to this. So like Rob said before as well, check out the show notes. There's a free course that if you want to keep expanding this and learning this in even more detail, you can keep opening it up. Otherwise, just keep hitting repeat on this episode. But
absolutely. And the free course, the best URL on earth, freecourse.com.au. That's really hard to memorize.
Yeah. Rob Flux from Property Developer Network. Thank you so much for your time, mate. Really appreciate having you on.
You're more than welcome. See ya.